the Philippine National Anthem.
Bakit kaya? Bakit ka ba naghihintay? Nahimukin pa, pilitin ka ng tadhana. Alam mo na kung bakit nagkakaganyan. Lumulutang, nasasayang ng buhay mo. Tanging binubulok ng iyong puso. Natutulog ba ang Diyos? Natutulog ba? Ba't ikaw ay kaagad sumusuko? Konting hirap at munting pagsubok lamang. Bakit ganyan? Nasaan ang iyong tapang? Naduduwag, nawawalan ng pag-asa. At iniisip na natutulog ba? Natutulog ba ang Diyos? Natutulog ba? Sikapin mo, pilitin mo, tibayan ang iyong puso. Tanging ikaw ang hubog sa iyong bukas. Huwag mo sanang akalaing natutulog ba ang Diyos? Ang buhay mo ay mayroong halaga sa Kanya. Dapat na na ikaw ay maghintay at himukin ka, pilitin ka ng tadhana. Gawin mo na kung ano ang nararapat. Magsikap ka at magtiwala sa may kapal. Nakahanda ang Diyos umialay sa'yo. Hinihintay ka lang, kaibigan. Sikapin mo, pilitin mo, tibayan ang iyong puso. Tanging ikaw ang hubog sa iyong bukas. Huwag mo sanang akalaing natutulog pa ang Diyos.
Ang buhay mo ay mayroong halaga sa Kanya.
Tibayan mo
be seated, and good morning. For the opening remarks, we'd like to welcome the President of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, Palawan Chapter, Attorney Joel Tan.
Thank you, Manong Mike. Good morning to everyone. I hope naantig tayo nung kanta ng Ihos, yung natutulog ba ang Diyos. I'm sure everyone feels the same, ano? Galing tayo doon sa pandemya, sa problema, but now here comes another election, bagong pag-asa. At salamat po sa mga kaibigan ko na nandito, kaibigan natin, at sa ating election officer, si Ma'am Shi Santos, na nagpaunlak ng kanyang presence. Tsaka pinayagan niya tayong gumawa ng Candidates Forum. Sa kaalaman po ng lahat, ito na ang pangatlong Candidates Forum na ginawa ng grupong ito. No? Puerto Princesa Chamber of Commerce, si Miss Joy Tabuada and our media partners, and then yung Rotaract. Before po, may makasama tayong ibang grupo, but now, we deem na ituloy pa rin ito and together with our sponsors. So I hope maraming makuha ang ating mga manonood sa Facebook Live at sasagutin ng maganda ng ating mga Ginoo ang tanong ng ating mga panelists. Salamat po, magandang umaga.
And now we'd like to call on Ms. Sheila Sison, representing the COMELEC of Puerto Princesa City. Ms. Sheila Sison for her message.
Good morning to everyone. In behalf of Commission on Elections and the Office of the City Election Officer, gusto ko pong magpasalamat sa Chamber of Commerce for organizing this kind of event. In a few days, we will select sets of leaders. At sa araw po ng May 9, ito po kasi yung araw na lahat tayo ay pantay-pantay. Pantay-pantay yung ating karapatan. Maging mayaman ka man, mahirap ka man, nakapag-aral ka o hindi. Ito po yung araw na yung karapatan nating bumoto at pumili kung sino po yung nararapat para po sa ating bayan. Sa ating po mga botante, tanggalin po muna natin ng anumang kulay at tayo po sana ay magkaisa para sa ating bayan. I hope through this platform, this forum, this will be your chance to hear, and I hope you will listen well to our candidates, yung kanilang mga programs para po sa ating gobyerno. Sa ating po mga kandidato, may God bless all of you. And naniniwala po ako na whoever wins in this election, it is God who will put you there. Again po, good morning to everyone and have a safe day to all.
Welcome to the Candidates Forum 2022. This forum aims to awaken nationalism, encourage the exercise of the right to information, and strengthen the electorate's right to suffrage. This historical event serves as an equitable opportunity for the candidates to lay down their political platforms and answer relevant questions relative to their candidacy. The Candidates Forum 2022 is brought to you by the Commission on Elections, Puerto Princesa City Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Hijos de San Jose, Integrated Bar of the Philippines, and Rotaract Club of Puerto Princesa Central. Now, please welcome our moderators, Miss Beth Marian and Mr. Mike Rodriguez. Beth Marian took up fine arts at the University of Santo Tomas and graduated her master's in marketing at the University of Wales. She acquired further learning on sustainable tourism and green business strategy from the University of Copenhagen, Hong Kong University, and the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. Beth Marian has been a consultant and resources speaker of the Department of Trade and Industry and is currently a mentor of the Philippine Center for Entrepreneurship or Go Negosyo. Our next moderator is retired Real Admiral Miguel Jose Rodriguez. Admiral Rodriguez is the highest-ranking Navy officer that Palawan ever produced, a product of the public school system. He graduated elementary at the East Central School and then at Palawan National High School. After that, entered the Philippine Military Academy and graduated as an ensign in the Philippine Navy. He retired in 2013 after 37 years of service to our country. Mike is happily married to Hidilyn Nieto Rodriguez, and they have 4 wonderful daughters and 3 lovable grandchildren. He is a full-blooded Cuyonon, born of pure Cuyonon parents, the late Judge Jose P. Rodriguez and the late Milagros Sandoval Rodriguez, both born in Cuyo, Palawan. Rear Admiral Rodriguez is the project director and general manager of the National Government Administrative Center in New Clark City and president of the GACAD-E ang mga Cuyonon. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to our moderators.
Duro kalabog. But isang napakagandang umaga at napakagandang bukas kung tama ang ating ihahalal, di ba?
Tama. Talagang
Lobe.
malaking chance, Manong Mike, para sa ating mga nakikinig sa radyo, nanonood sa FB Live, para sa lahat ng electorate na talagang marinig ano ba ang plataforma ng ating mga candidates at makapili ng mabuti sa ating susunod na eleksyon.
Kaya tayong mga undecided na katulad ko at katulad ng marami pa sa atin, pagkatapos ng forum na ito, pipili na ako.
Gawa na kayo ng kodigo, Manong, ha?
Alright, and that's why we are Who We Vote,
The Candidates Forum 2022.
Okay.
Welcome po sa lahat.
Ngayon nakikita natin ang representation ng ating mga panelists
Oo
na
nga po.
nagbibigay kulay sa Puerto Princesa sapagkat dala nila ang lahat ng mga sektor na kung saan naging sikat ang Puerto Princesa.
Opo.
Papakilala natin sila.
Yes po.
Okay. Unang-una, from the business sector, ito po ay isang kaibigan at kapitbahay nagtapos ng elementary at high school sa Palawan Hope Christian School. Grabe, manalo extension. Graduated Bachelor of Science in Commerce sa UST. Schoolmate mo.
Opo.
Registered real estate broker. And siya ang past president of the Palawan Geographic Society, Board of Trustee, Puerto Princesa, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Operations Manager of Andrews Supermarket San Jose, Operations Manager of Meren School. Please welcome from the business sector, Mr. R.G. P. Lim. Palakpakan natin.
Ngayon naman po, he is representing one of the biggest industries in Puerto Princesa. Yan po ang industry ng tourism. We'd like to introduce our panelist for tourism, Mr. Brian John Dizon. He graduated AB Masscom broadcast at the Centro Escolar University and also completed poultry production with the animal husbandry at UP Los Baños. Presently, he is the General Manager and Training Head at Ala Amid Hotel. He is a Farm Operations and School Director at Havenry Harvest, Regional Vice President for the MIMAROPA Farm Tourism Association. He was the past President of and Board of Directors of ATAP, that's the Association of Accredited Tourist Accommodations of Puerto Princesa, Inc. He is the Executive Secretary of Puerto Princesa City Tourism Council and Vice President of the Palawan Association of Learning Sites, Agri-Extensions, and Farm Schools. Please welcome Mr. Brian John Dizon.
And now for the health sector, sabi nga nila, health is wealth. We'd like to welcome a Doctor of Medicine, a member of the Rotary Club of Puerto Princesa Central, a fellow Rotarian, and also president of the Palawan Medical Mission Group, MPC Medical Staff Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of Palawan Medical Society, Dr. Paul Warren Saludes.
Ngayon naman po, sector namin, Manong,
Alright.
women and children. So, kasali ka rin doon.
Sa children.
Okay, si Ma'am Dr. Hidilyn Martinez ay tubong Marinduque, but she has graced our shores for some time now. She is a graduate Bachelor of Science in Social Work at the Centro Escolar University. She has 2 masters, one in Public Administration at the National College of Business and Arts, and a master's also in Social Work, major in Social Administration at the UP Diliman. Her doctorate was completed at the Philippine Women's University in Philosophy and Social Development. Siya po ay presently chairperson of the Department of Behavioral Science at the Palawan State University. She is also Gender and Development Coordinator for the College of Arts and Humanities at the PSU, chairperson of the Department of Behavioral Science, College of Arts and Humanities at PSU, and she is also President, National Association of Social Work Education South Luzon Chapter, as well as President of the Autism Society of the Philippines, Puerto Princesa City Chapter. Welcome, Dr. Hidilyn Martinez.
And now for the youth and education sector. Ito sector ko.
Sige na nga.
Okay. Born in Aborlan, Palawan, and married with 2 kids, he is a student of Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering at the Western Philippine University. And from the same university, he is a member of the Board of Regents, president of the Federation of Supreme Student Council, member of the Aborlan Municipal Youth Development Council. So please welcome the Editor-in-Chief of the WPO Collegian and President of the Supreme Student Council Main Campus, Harmon Rick Cayaon.
And last but not the least, representing culture, arts, indigenous peoples, and environment, we would like to introduce to you Maria Teresa Conde Prieto, or Dingot, fondly called Dingot by friends and family. She was born and raised in Baguio, and Dingot found her way to her roots in Palawan and the fold of her mother's clan, the Makasaets. She is a graduate of the University of the Philippines, Baguio campus, with degrees in Bachelor of Arts in Humanities and Bachelor of Science in major in Philosophy. Both of her theses for these degrees were for the Tagbanwa of the west coast of Palawan. Her passion and dedication for culture and arts include the establishment of the Kamarikutan Cafe at Gallery, the first art gallery and repository for culture in Puerto Princesa and Palawan. She also contributed to institutionalizing the province's Baragatan Festival as highlights and showcase of Palawan's local culture. In her continuing commitment and advocacy for indigenous peoples, for culture and arts, Dingot's beacon of light is her guiding mantra. Dr. Jose Rizal's ang hindi marunong lumingon sa pinanggalingan ay hindi makakarating sa kanyang paroroonan. Please welcome Ma'am Dingot Conde Prieto.
So there you have it, ang ating 6 na panelists representing the primary sectors that Puerto Princesa City is well known for. Dadako naman tayo sa ating mga kandidato. Actually, they need no introduction.
Oo nga po,
Grabe.
everybody knows them.
Hindi kailangan. Kaya lang parehong maganda lalaki. We need to... Alright, so let's do the introduction. Itong unang kandidato natin ay isang tao na kilalang-kilala maski saan ka pupunta. Pareho sila, candidates for the representative of the 3rd District of Palawan. Wala na tayong babanggitin kung hindi ang tao sa kaliwa, dating mayor ng Puerto Princesa City sa napakahabang panahon, si Edward Hagedorn. Palakpakan natin. Si Edward Hagedorn ay ipinanganak sa Rizal, married with 2 children. Siya ay graduate ng San Sebastian Recoletos at saka University of the East. School ko rin yun. Siya ay naging mayor ng Puerto Princesa for 3 consecutive terms and 1 term after winning a special election in 2002. At ito po ang ating mayor na nagpasikat sa Puerto Princesa. Walang iba kundi si Edward Hagedorn. Palakpakan natin muli.
Ang kanya naman pong katunggali ay ating incumbent congressman for the 3rd District of Palawan, si Attorney Hill Acosta Jr. Si Attorney Hill po ay tubong Palawan. Siya po ay nagtapos ng kanyang college degree sa Silliman University and the Palawan State University. He took up his law studies at the Arellano University School of Law, and he passed the bar in the 2013 exams. He worked at the Provincial Legal Office for 2 years, Provincial Information Officer for 3 years, 1 term as member of the House of Representatives under the 3rd District of Palawan. So sa kanya pong pagtayo bilang ating congressman, incumbent congressman, he authored bills, principally authored bills, 115 po na bills, and co-authored 68 bills. Let's welcome po our incumbent Congressman Attorney Hill A. Acosta Jr.
All right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our congressional candidates for the 3rd District. And we move on by explaining to everybody the mechanics. How are we going to do this?
Opo, para po clear sa lahat at maging fair po tayo. Ayan, let's look at the mechanics. So Manong, ano ba ang unang mangyayari?
Nag-draw lots na sila at nakita natin, napili nila ang kanilang mga upuan. At itong mga kandidato natin will answer the question of panelist number 1. Ang unang sasagot ay si candidate number 1. Pagkatapos, for the same question, candidate number 2 will answer. And then, babalik ta rin naman natin for panelist number 2, baliktad naman yung tanong.
Opo.
Alright.
Okay, and then since there are 6 panelists, candidate number 1 will also answer first the questions from panelists 3 and 5, while candidate number 2 will answer first the questions of panelists 4 and 6.
In other words, salit-salit lang.
Opo.
Alright.
Panelists' questions shall be answered by the candidate within a period of 90 seconds.
Pag sumobra,
Pag sumobra, meron pong maririnig silang isang ring ng bell, no? Signals to the candidate that the remaining time to answer is only 10 seconds. So, hindi pa po sumusobra to. Before the 90 seconds, ayan po yung sound, no? Before the 90 seconds is up, there will be a bell when 10 seconds is remaining.
at pag naubos na yung 10 seconds, may 2 ring. At pag hindi umalis, bawas sa boto.
Okay, so the panelists din po may propound one follow-up question to be answered by the concerned candidate for a period of 30 seconds. So meron pong pwedeng follow-up question ang ating panelist.
Kung gusto ng panelist natin.
Yes po.
Okay. So after 2 rounds of questions, in other words, our panelists will ask 2 sets of questions.
Yes.
Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for their closing statements.
Okay. Now we'd like to remind the panelists that their questions should be brief and straight to the point para po masagot po ng maayos ng ating mga candidates.
And we have a time limit, so of course, susundin natin yan. And we are advised, everybody, to follow the quorum for the activity.
Okay.
Kasama dito yung pag-silent ng ating cellphone at ng ating mga bibig dahil dito tayo magpo-focus sa kanila. Game na?
Game na!
Alright.
So Manong, i-welcome muna natin ulit baka mga bagong nakikinig sa ating radio at saka kaka-login pa lang sa ating live stream. Welcome po to We Are Who We Vote, the Candidates Forum 2022.
2022. Okay. So, ang ating questions will be started with panelist number 1. Tama ba yun?
Tama po.
From the business sector?
Yes.
All right, Mr. RG Lim.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, Manong Mike, Ma'am Beth,
Morning.
sa ating Mayor Ed, Congressman Hill. Ako po ulit si RG Lim, representing business sector. About mass transportation po ang aking itatanong. Alam po nating lahat ang nagiging problema at magiging problema natin sa trapiko dito sa Puerto Princesa City. Isa po sa mga solusyon dito ay ang mass transportation. Ito po ay ginagawa ng mga advanced na bansa like Hong Kong, China at iba pang lugar. Ano ang magiging plano nyo para ma-improve ang mass transportation sa Puerto Princesa City? Ano rin ang plano nyo ngayong ipinagbabawal na po ang mga tricycle sa National Highway? Thank you.
Sino unang sasagot?
Si Congressman Hill Acosta po yata ang nakapick ng number 1 na sabunutan. So, Congressman Hill.
Thank you, Ma'am, Manong Mike, Mayad nga temprano. Good morning to all of you. Sir RG, as to your question, number 1 is to the mass transportation. First and foremost, we have to have a plan as to within the city of Puerto Princesa. Number 1, because maliit masyado. We cannot expand into 6 lanes within the city. Number 1 plan is to have 2 aqueducts. One here, starting in Baywalk, going to San Pedro, going to Siksikan. That would be for the south. Second option is here, after the airport going to the north. Now, as to the issue of tricycle, the first plan is to have that, to decongest this one. But as to the national highway, especially coming out of the pandemic, I think that the use of tricycle within the city of Puerto Princesa, we must ask exceptions. Why? Because the policy of the national government is always 80% based on what's happening in Manila, which is not applicable here in the city of Puerto Princesa. Second, as to the mass transportation issue, there is a plan of the DPWH to have a proposal of having a train coming from the northern islands, which is El Nido, going to Buliluyan, which is the southernmost tip. Third is to have opening the routes. One in Coron, which is Bora going to Mindoro. One in El Nido, which is San Fernando, Puerto, and we'll have one in Buliluyan in Batarasa.
All right, thank you very much, Kong Hill. The same question will be answered by Mayor Ed.
Yeah, first of all, papasalamat po ako sa inyo na pagbigyan ako maging part of this forum. I don't think we're ready for mass transport as of now, even in the near future, considering the growth of our economy here in Puerto Princesa and also the existing road networks. Ang tricycle, ang isang cause ng ating traffic. And when I was the mayor, tinawag na ako sa DILG regarding this problem. Para ma-decongest yung traffic natin, alisin mo na yung mga tricycle sa highway. It was a hard decision to make. Kasi una-una, mga 4,000 tricycle operators yan or drivers na mawawalan ng trabaho. Sabi ko I think it's Secretary Robredo yata yun, time yan. Sabi ko, Secretary, napakahirap alisin without an alternative program. Pero meron na kami ugnayan sa AEDB to at least minimize yung pollution caused by the tricycles by replacing them with electric tricycles and also using a certain lane for the tricycles. Ang hirap po nun, dahil nagkaroon na kami ng communication, hindi lang natuloy, nagkulang kami sa requirements in the production of electric vehicles na sana i-replace natin sa tricycles. And removing them on the street without any alternative programs, may hirapan. Kaya humingi ako ng extension kay Secretary. Give us enough time to study the situation. Kung paano namin mabibigyan ng alternative livelihood programs yung mga tricycles before we remove them sa highway.
Thank you, Mr. Hagdon. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, meaning to say for both po, no? Are you with or against po sa tricycles dito po within the highway, national highway po natin?
Of course, we have to follow the law. Talagang bawal yun sa... Yung nga, ang sinabi ko lang, give us time, nung time ko, to look for alternative livelihood programs for the displaced tricycles, just in case we implement the law.
Kong Hill, 30 seconds.
Thank you again, Manong Mike. Definitely, each and every law has its exceptions. It is the national policy of the state na dapat bawal. But para saan? In Manila, yes, because ang lapad ng highway 8 lanes. But within the city, meaning from Santa Lourdes going to Irawan, I don't think. Dapat, we're saying that Palawan is special and we need a special law for the mass transportation here in the city of Puerto Princesa and the province of Palawan.
So is that a yes or a no? Yes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Argeline. We'll go to the next panelist.
Yes, now we'd like to ask Mr. Brian Dizon, representing tourism, to ask his question of our candidates.
Good morning po, Congressman Hill and Mayor Ed, and to our hosts, Ma'am Beth and Sir Mike. My question po is, of course, in line with tourism. So we know that the tourism is one of the first hit and declared as last to recover as a result of the pandemic. I-add pa po natin dyan yung recently naapektuhan tayo ng Typhoon Odette. So how do you think you can help elevate the tourism industry to the next level without deviating from the policies of the LGU and of course yung not sacrificing our health and safety?
Mayor Ed? Palit lang ha, palit.
Okay. Well, alam niyo, in preparation for my resumption to office with God's grace as a public servant, I've started communicating with the national agencies on different aspects of management. Ang isa nga pong nakita natin dyan, yung problema ngayon, how to restore yung mga na-displaced na mga families bago natin maibenta ng gusto yung tourism sa Puerto Princesa. But definitely, itutuloy lang namin ang ating mga nasimulan sa promotion ng tourism and of course, additional programs. Ngayon, nakapag-ugnayan na kami sa PESA, ito yung investment agencies, na promoter ng investment agencies. Dito pinapa-approve ko na yung pagkakaroon ng PESA Hub sa Puerto Princesa. Long mas matagal nang ini-request natin yan sa PESA. As a matter of fact, meron na tayong napiling PESA site sa economic zone natin, yung Santa Lucia. And we've started developing that area sana for PESA. Kaya lang, napakaraming requirements bago matupad. Even this PESA Hub, I think, in-applyan nito ng may-ari ng isang agency rito na noon pa niya in-applyan 3 years ago hanggang ngayon, hindi pa na-accident. Pero ito yung ating bibilisan, plus, of course, yung coordination with national agencies who can help us restore our tourism potentials.
Thank you. Same question, please.
Nawala.
Tourism sector, can you repeat the question?
Sure po. So, summarize ko lang, Kong Hill, in this time of the pandemic, paano po natin matutulungan i-elevate or i-bring to the next level ang tourism industry in Puerto Princesa and of course yung nasasakupan natin without deviating from the policies of the LGU and not sacrificing yung health safety?
Number one is, it is but a fact that the island of Palawan is the best island destination in the whole world, which has its center Puerto Princesa. But we are not yet in our fullest potential. Meaning for the past 30 years, Cavite, Laguna, Rizal was introduced into relation to the national infrastructure. But as to Palawan, wala pa. But we are still number one. We are not yet in our fullest potential. Number one is to ask the national government to, not only in words, saying that the island of Palawan is the last frontier, but also in action, that they have to invest in us. Because in terms of the GDP of the Philippines, I think the contributions of the province of Palawan is 5%. Napakalaki in relation to other provinces. We must have infrastructure here. Second, is to the development as far as Aborlan and Puerto Princesa is concerned. Because now, 70% of the flights coming in does not roam around the city. They go to El Nido. But that is a development in terms of our other municipalities in Palawan. But we have to make Puerto Princesa a destination of its own, having the bread and butter, which is the tourism industry. We have underground, yes. But apart from underground, what is the next destinations here? I believe the next destinations here in the city of Puerto Princesa and the municipality of Orban is the Western Coast, Kulandanum, Apurawan, Bagong Bayan, Simpucan, Napsan, and also the beaches there in Tigman and Apurawan in the municipality of Aborlan. Thank you.
Thank you, Kong Hill. Any follow-up question?
So thank you po for your answers. I heard reconstruction, infrastructure, and promotions to summarize most of the answers. Ano po yung napipili ninyo, no, after underground that will become another flagship offer or tourism product of Puerto Princesa?
Kong Hill, 30 seconds.
Number one is the western portion. Second is to have near beaches here in the airport, because one of my friends went here in the Puerto Princesa and he asked me after landing in the airport, where's the beach? And I could point Talaudjong here in Honda Bay, but napakalayo ho ng mga magagandang beach dito sa Puerto. We have to develop within the vicinity here in the urban areas of the city.
Thank you, Mayor Ed. After the UGR, what next?
You know, in 2004, we called for the first investment forum here in Puerto Princesa. But unlike the other forums where no regulatory agencies were invited, dito sa forum namin, in-invite namin lahat ng agencies involved, tourism, DENR, Department of Trade, BOI. And we came up with a plan. Actually, pinpointed na namin yung growth development sa tourism dito sa Puerto Princesa. Ang Puerto Princesa dito sa bayan, okay na ito, ang underground. But sa West Coast, nandun kami nagko-concentrate. And now with Aborlan, the inclusion of the 3rd District, lalo na yung area na yan sa West Coast ng Aborlan. Lahat po yan potential growth areas for tourism.
Thank you. Was that a bell? Okay, next. For the health sector.
Yes, we'd like to invite Dr. Paul Saludes to ask his question of our candidates.
First to answer will be Mayor Ed.
Good morning. It's a privilege to sit beside my co-panelists and our lovely moderators. Of course, our handsome candidates. No? So, good morning, sirs. No? I have been practicing here in Puerto Princesa for the last 10 years, and it's a common scenario for me to experience patients coming from non-doctors. No? So I feel that there's an, hindi naman rampant, siguro there's a more subtle word for it. But as a legislator, how would you address illegal practice of medicine here in Puerto Princesa? It may range from a pharmacist changing the prescriptions of doctors up to non-medical doctors injecting some stuff on the faces of some of our kababayans, no? So they come to us and we have to treat them, and yun, I think we should do something about it. So, yes, sir.
Well, I don't think we can solve that on our own. Siguro ang suggestion ko rito, we will call for let's say conference of different stakeholders, especially the health officials and the local government units, to come up with a solution to this problem. And rest assured that kung ano po yung may bigay ninyong recommendation sa amin that will be needing legislation, I will personally act on it in the fastest way possible.
Kong Hill.
Thank you, Doctor, for your question. Like any others here in the Philippines, we have good laws, especially relating to the malpractice in medicine. What is lacking is enforcement. That's number one. Because as you have said, ako po hindi masyadong aware, Doctor, na may ganun palang issue na malaki sa lungsod ng Puerto Princesa. One, I don't think that it needs another legislation because there are good laws relative to the issue, but more enforcement. Second is to the mindset of the people. Because as Palawan as it is, Puerto being the second largest in terms of area next to Davao, Palawan being the largest area of the province of Palawan, there are many far-flung barangays na hindi po nare-reach ng technology. Meaning, they do not know the difference between a doctor and a manghihilot and albularyo in the far-flung bondocs of the province of Palawan. Not only the third, but also in the second and the first. So we must have, if there is an issue like that, we must have an information dissemination to change the mindset. Because people in the far-flung areas, kapag ho nagkasakit, hindi naman ho bumababa sa puerto. Pumupunta ho sa kanilang mga doktor na alam nila doon sa kanilang communities. We have to change that. Or we have to give them access. Because kung malayo ang doktor, hindi ho talaga pupuntahan ng ating mga kababayan, especially outside of the 3rd District. Thank you po.
Any follow-up question?
No further questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Saludes.
Thank you. And now po, we'd like to ask Dr. Hidilyn to fire her questions.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat at isang maganda pong oportunidad na makasama kayo ngayong umaga. Ang aking pong tanong ay tungkol sa teenage pregnancy sa Puerto Princesa. Isang dekada na po napapataas ang kaso ng teenage pregnancy sa Puerto Princesa. So ano po ang inyong naiisip na panukala para mabawasan po lang ito? Ayon po sa Roots of Health, 20% po ng Palawan births is attributed to teenage pregnancies. So ano pa ang inyong mga panukala sa ating Kongreso para ito ay mapababa naman natin o tuluyan mang mawala?
That is a hard question, Mama. Number one is as to the greater culture of Palawan. Ano ho tayo eh? Hindi pa tayo evolved as to that when talking about sex education. Parang tabu when speaking to, especially in the high school and elementary days, medyo problematic pa. But I think in the years to come, kapag nag-evolve na as the culture of the whole province of Palawan, na ma-discuss, na mapag-usapan. Because kung hindi mapag-usapan without information coming from us, coming from the government, stating these problems na meron ho talaga mataas, especially not here in Puerto, but in the rural areas of Palawan, talagang ho rampant yung teenage pregnancies. But number one question is why? Bakit ho kaya mataas? Is it lack of information? I think so. Second is, do they have access to health facilities there in the province of Palawan? Siguro ho, ngayon medyo. Pero that is a very hard issue to tackle pa at this point of time. But we need first to because not all of the people knows that problem. Hindi common knowledge na mataas pala. So I think information dissemination is the first thing that we must do in order to combat teenage pregnancies here in the province of Palawan. Thank you po.
Thank you, Annie. Mayor.
Ako, I agree with Congressman Acosta na tayo, we're not yet culturally ready to discuss sexual reproduction with our children. Medyo nagkakahiyaan pa tayo nito. So I would suggest, siguro, it should be a combined effort of the parents, teachers, and health officials to come up with a very strong dissemination drive of information regarding the hazards of early pregnancy and also yung epekto nito sa ating mga kabataan. It will be a united effort of all the stakeholders.
Ma'am, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes po. Bilang po magiging mga kongresista natin sa Puerto Princesa, would you consider proposing for an amendment of the family code to lower the age of parental responsibility? Kasi ang nangyayari po, wala pong obligasyon yung nakabuntis na lalaki dun sa mga babae kasi sila ay mga minor de edad. Pero kung ito ay maisasabata, siguro ang pagbaba ng edad ng parental responsibility, kasi ang pwedeng ikasalang is 18 and above. Dahil po doon, nawawalan po ng una ang isyu ng hindi pagkakapantay-pantay ng lalaki at babae pagdating sa isyu ng parental responsibility. Isa pa din po ay dahil dito, napapabayaan yung batang babae na mag-alaga mag-isa sa kanyang anak.
Mayor Ed muna, on the rebuttal.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with that. We have to amend the code. And if there's any suggestion coming from professionals and other agencies involved in this problem, will be very, very considerate and looking for a way to have this bill passed.
Konghil?
Thank you, ma'am. As a matter of policy, I am not amenable to lowering the age of majority from 18 to below. But yes, to the responsibility of the lalaki. Because in our culture, it is always the mom ang naiiwan na mag-alaga sa bata. But in lowering the age of majority, baka naman ho mapunta sa isang sitwasyon na kung saan yung dalawa, 16 or 17 below, baka hindi po kayang gumawa pa ng pamilya. But the responsibility, yes, not only doon sa nakabuntes at saka yung magulang no nakabuntes, dapat magbigay.
Thank you, Konghil. Well, really tough question. And our pacing is mabilis, ha? Okay, so we'll slow down a little bit. Dito naman tayo sa Education and Youth. Ito yung aking sector. We please welcome Mr. Harmon Rick Kayaon.
Hello, good morning po sa ating candidates, sa ating moderators, and sa aking pong co-panelists. My question is, K-12 is designed to produce workforce-ready high school graduates, but the current reality is very, very far from this. What measures do you propose to ensure that the skill level of our high school graduates is indeed workforce-ready?
Please, okay, go ahead.
Yes, as to the issue of K-12, we are in the initial stages of implementation of K-12. Number one problem is that in its policy, dapat pagkatapos ng high school, dapat tanggapin na eh. But the reality on the ground is that pag nag-graduate ng K-12, ang mga businesses, hindi priority yung ating mga kabataan na gumraduate ng K-12. So we must reverse the situation. We must implement what is the spirit of the law in order for K-12 to grow as a policy of the state. We must enforce to the businesses na dapat pag-graduate ng K-12, they are and can be employed by the sector. Kasi kaya nga siya dinisign ng ganyan para makapagtrabaho agad yung ating mga kabataan and also in terms of their education. So we must enforce na dapat tanggapin. And also, we must have infrastructure again in terms of the school. Kasi kulang yung ating DepEd, kapag nagbabudget hearing, they're always saying na 99% of the buildings of the Philippines is okay na. But on the ground, it's not reality. In fact, here in the city of Puerto Princesa, San Miguel National High School, doon sa Napsan, especially in other areas of Palawan where there are island barangays, island municipalities, there is lack of infrastructure that can cater the needs of the K-12 program. And also teachers alike, na dapat talagang meron. Especially in a province like ours na napakalaki at diverse, and also in a city like ours na napakalaki in terms of its geographic location.
Well, I have not really studied this issue thoroughly, but when it comes to education, from the very beginning of my administration, we've been very supportive on the needs of the students and the graduates. And maybe, given time, I'll be able to really come up with a better prospect on this issue.
Follow-up question, Mr. Kayaon? No follow-up question. Now we're coming to the lighter side. We have the last of the 6 panelists.
We'd like to invite Ma'am Dingot Prieto to ask the question for culture, arts, IP, and environment.
Mayad nga temprano kanindong tanan. Morning, everybody. They say save the best for the last. And earlier, we were requested to have easy questions. Unfortunately, when it comes to IP and culture, it can never be easy. Because we have the laws, but as you said, Congressman Hill, enforcement is a problem. We do not lack laws, but we do lack enforcement. So, ito pang mga katanungan nito, I will relay to you straight from in their words of the IPs. So, sa inyo pong dalawang gentlemen, ano po ang inyong magagawa sa mga paglabag, lalo nang maahensya ng pamahalaan at mga pribadong individual na rin sa Section 59, Republic Act 8371 or the IPRA law, patungkol sa free and prior informed consent?
Congressman, Mayor Ed.
You know, my track record will show na from the very beginning, very supportive po tayo sa mga pinaglalaban ng mga IPs dito sa Puerto Princesa. Even sa mga ancestral domain claim nila, we have really spent a lot of time and effort para matulungan yung ating mga indigenous people. And in this problem, yes, we will do everything we can as Congressman of the District List to really promote the fight of all these, solutions, to find solutions to these problems.
Thank you. Kong Hill?
Thank you, ma'am. As to the issue of Section 59 RA 8371 or the IPRA law, ma'am, medyo magulo pa eh. We have to amend the law in order for there is no ambiguity. Because now there is, especially as to the applications of CADC and CADT, both issues. On the side of the NCIP, nagpo-problema dahil nga ang tagal mag-file. On the other side of LGUs and DNR, ang NCIP ay hindi na dumidiretso sa dalawang agency, which is supposed to be dapat compose sila nila, NCIP, DNR, LGUs, because there is a grandfathered clause in the IPRA law, ma'am, di ba? When it comes to those ancestral domains that were titled before, doon huy nagkakaroon ng conflict. But definitely, we are in support in relation to our IP communities here in the city of Puerto Princesa, the Batak and Tagbanwas, especially in the western portion, which is now very rampant. Yung ating kung pagkukuha ng kanilang lupa or kung hindi naman kinuha, ibinenta. Which, on the side of the buyers, akala nila po pwede. In fact, hindi. Kasi hindi naman ho pagmamayari ng isang tao yung lupaing ninuno, which is the claim is within the whole tribe. So we must have enforcement. And as to that issue, ma'am, yung kanina po, yung section 59, we have to lessen the ambiguity in order for the implementation of IPRA. Because remember, when it came to the Supreme Court, I think, konting-konti lang, when the IPRA law was decided on whether or not it is unconstitutional or not, so dapat to talaga walang ambiguity. And all of the agencies, not only NCIP, but DNR and the local government units have to determine, they have to work in conjunction in order for the rights of our Tagbanos and Bataks must be appraised po.
Thank you. Follow up?
Ano po ang inyong magagawa tungkol sa paglaan at pagbabahagi ng Puerto Princesa Underground River ng royalty share para sa komunidad ng mga katutubo sa nasabing lugar?
Mayor Ed.
During my time, meron na pong agreement dyan na dapat magkaroon ng share yung mga katutubo, especially in the vicinity surrounding the underground river. I just don't know if it's being implemented now, pero no, even the barangays have their own shares dapat doon sa income ng underground river.
Kong Hill?
Ma'am Dinggot, my first proposal is to have a special law in order to PPUR, not within the INAIPAS law, but have a special like to Bataha. Second, as to the share of all the 66 barangays of Puerto Princesa, it is these four, Cabayugan, Marufinas, Tagabinet, which are highly restricted, especially the IPs. Kasi pumunta po kami doon, nagtagtayo lang ng kambingan, binawal na ng park. So dapat meron, no? At especially, let the barangay determine kung paano nila gamitin yung kanilang share.
Thank you, Kong Hill. So that ends round one. Let's give our panelists and our candidates a big round of applause.
Malamang-malaman ang mga tanong at ang mga sagot ng ating mga candidates. So we just like to highlight, no? Short highlight, summary ng ating mga tanong at mga sagot. No?
Yes, I'd like to start with Argelim. Alam niyo yung tricycle na yan. It's always been a big issue for us. Ang sabi ni Mayor Ed, let's give time for that. We want to be able to give an alternative, pero kailangan mayroong livelihood programs. And for
the candidate,
almost the same answer. We're going to remove the tricycle, but we need to prepare for that. For tourism, what do you have?
For tourism, ang tanong po is how we will restore and elevate yung ating turismo dito sa ating bayan, no? So, ang nasabi po ni Mayor Ed ay kailangan po ng investment, no? Sa infrastructure at pagtayo ng PESA site. In fact, he cited na meron ng napiling site para dito. i-continue ang promotions ng tourism sa ating bayan at i-develop po ang West Coast kasi importante at maraming mga atraksyon sa West Coast. Kay Attorney Hill Acosta naman po, sabi niya po ay kailangan mag-invest. We should ask the national government to invest in the infrastructure needed, no, for tourism here and make Puerto Princesa and develop Western attractions. At saka po, isang na-mention ni Attorney Hill is kailangan natin i-develop ang nearby beaches to the airport kasi maraming naghahanap noon.
Yes, actually that's part of the follow-up question. After the UGR, what next? Sabi ni Mayor Ed, ipagpatuloy yung naumpisahan. And sabi naman ni Kong Hill ay yung mga nearby beaches kailangan i-develop din. So that's the answer. For the health sector, yung illegal practice of medicine. Hindi na pwede yung mga papogi sa tabi-tabi. What did they say?
So kay Mayor Ed po, ang sabi po niya, although it's hard to combat this practice, no, they have, sabi niya, he will approach the LGUs to come up with recommendations para ma-address yung ganitong maling ginagawa.
All stakeholders, sabi niya.
Correct.
Lahat.
All stakeholders should come together kasi hindi ito gawa ng isa lang or isang sektor lamang.
Yung kay Kong Hill?
Kay Kong Hill po, ang sabi niya po, marami na po tayong laws. Kailangan lang pong i-enforce ng maayos and also educate people by information dissemination, no, at saka ang isang importante rin po ay magbigyan ng access to doctors yung mga nasa malalayong lugar para po hindi na nila kailangan tumakbo sa hindi tamang nagbibigay ng medical advice.
All right, and we move on for the health, women and children on the issue of teenage pregnancy.
Opo, mainit na issue po yan. Yes.
Kay Congressman Hill, nakikita niya may lack of information on that and access to health, so there has to be more on that respect. Okay, Mayor Ed?
Yes, they both recognized po na hindi tayo culturally ready to discuss this point openly, but it's very important, sabi ni attorney, na we will remind parents and also the youth, no, kung ano yung hazards noon, at saka talaga po importante ang information dissemination to the appropriate groups, parents and teenagers alike.
Yes, they both agree on that. And yung other point ni Congressman Hill is that lessening the age of majority might bring in more problems. Okay. So on the K-12 issue.
Okay, on the K-12, ang sabi po ni Attorney Acosta, kailangan pong i-encourage natin ang mga businesses natin to hire yung mga graduates natin kasi talaga namang supposed to be, dapat ready na sila for hiring at that point, no? So let's encourage also our business sector na i-hire sila. Aside from that, ipaigtingin natin ang availability ng teachers and infrastructure para po ma-study ito at ma-improve para sa ating mga kababayan.
Ang keyword ni Kong Hill dito is infrastructure. Ang keyword ni Mayor Ed dito are the needs of the students. Gusto niyang tignan, pagpatuloy kung ano yung mga pangangailangan ng ating mga estudyante for this.
Correct.
And finally, yung kay Dingot, the IPRA law.
According to Mayor Ed, kailangan pong i-continue ang support at i-enforce ang IPRA law at ganoon din naman po sa underground river na question, na share ng mga ating mga IP communities. Sabi po niya ay kailangan nating i-enforce na meron talaga dapat silang share kasi nagawa na po during his past administration na i-assure na meron silang makukuha.
Ang focus niya dito ni Mayor Ed is the ancestral domain. And on the part of Congressman Hill, gusto niyang magkaroon ng amendment sa batas to be able to support the requirements of the IPs, especially on the 4 barangays that you mentioned. And incidentally, kayong dalawa na nandyan ngayon are all members of the IP, katulad din natin dito.
Opo. One other point that was mentioned was that Attorney Hill thinks that the ambiguity of the law should be studied and lessened. no? Kasi lahat dito, kailangan ng stakeholders magbigay ng rekomendasyon kung paano mawawala ang ambiguity ng IPRA law.
All right, so that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, for round one, let's give our candidates and our panelists a really big round of applause. Okay, we'll take a short break as we prepare for the second round. We'll listen to some of our sponsors. Medyo relax muna tayo.
The Candidates Forum organizing team would like to thank the following sponsors: 7-Digit Construction and Trucking Corporation, ALC Printing House, Palawan Grapico Printing and Signage, Midtown Sales, Andrews Supermarket, Holiday Suites, Yakult, La Dessert, Louis Luis Eco Store and Restaurant, LV Policarpio Construction and Trading, and Nature Spring. We would also like to thank our media partners: Radio Bandera Philippines, Alpha News Philippines, Repetec, ang dyaryo ng Pilipino, and DYPR. The Candidates Forum organizing team would like to thank the following sponsors: 7-Digit Construction and Trucking Corporation, ALC Printing House, Palawan Grapico Printing and Signage, Midtown Sales, Andrews Supermarket, Holiday Suites, Yakult, La Dessert, Louis Luis Eco Store and Restaurant, LV Policarpio Construction and Trading, and Nature Spring. We would also like to thank our media partners: Radio Bandera Philippines, Alpha News Philippines, Repetec, ang dyaryo ng Pilipino, and DYPR.
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back to the second round of questions for our candidates for Congressman of the 3rd District of Palawan. Ngayon naman po, babalik rin natin ang ating run of panelists. Mauuna naman pong magtanong ngayon ang Culture, Arts, IPs, and Environment. So, Ma'am Dingot.
Hello ulit po. Ito po ay patungkol naman po sa pagkuha ng resource use permits. Ano po ang magagawa ninyo tungkol sa kahirapan ng mga katutubo sa pagkuha ng resource use permits, pag-ani ng non-timber forest products, gathering permits para sa rattan, almasiga at honey? Thank you.
Mayor Ed, resource use permits.
Siguro po palakasin natin yung rights ng mga katutubo sa pag-gather nito mga resources nito, especially yung almasiga. Napakahirap talaga ng inaabot na ating mga katutubo bago sila makakuha ng permit mag-gather ng almasiga at yung mga restrictions bago nila may benta. Ngayon nga, completely binawal na yata. And even yung mga simple forest products na gusto nilang pagkakitaan, napakahigpit na mga restrictions. When I take office, sigurado ko pa matutulungan ko through legislation kung paano mapapalakas yung rights ng mga katutubo natin. And although this is a completely new horizon for me, hindi ko alam ang mga procedures niya sa legal aspects, pero I'm a fast learner naman. I can easily adapt to the situation.
Thank you. Kong Hill.
Ma'am Dingot, especially in the PPUR, these 4 barangays, including New Panggangan in Marofinas, in the proposed bill, dapat ho talaga palakasin yung usage in terms of IPs. Why? Because long before underground became underground river, yung mga IPs, they're doing what they're doing now, is the gathering of almasiga. When I was there 2 months prior, I was asking them, gaano ba kahirap kumuha ng almasiga? And it turned out, hindi lang yung almasiga ho pala, hindi nakikita within the malapit na vicinity, doon pa ho talaga sa loob. So, especially in those 4 barangays, dapat we have to make it easier for the IPs. Not only in the 4 barangays, but within the whole province of Palawan, na napakaraming IPs. And long before, they're doing that. Ngayon, na medyo civilized na ang mga lugar, we should not stop them using it. Or, if we stop them using that for their livelihood, dapat bigyan natin ng kapalit. Ano ang kapalit? Especially in the 4 barangays of PPUR, dapat we have to address that. Kung ayaw natin silang pakunin ng almasiga, we have to provide for the IPs surrounding PPUR because it is the bread and butter of tourism in the city of Puerto Princesa.
Thank you. Any follow-up question?
Meron po ba kayong maitutulong sa in terms of batas para sa paggamit ng tangible at intangible heritage ng mga katutubo? This is also related to Section 59, yung free and prior informed consent.
Konghil.
Yes, ma'am. Dapat we have to strengthen the tangible and intangible cultures of our IPs. Especially, but we have to tell the story, Ma'am Dingot, of our IPs. Ano nga ba? Kasi tayo, from here in the Puerto Princesa, I'm not very aware of the culture of Tagbanwa and Batak. Meron Taot Bato in the south. We have to tell their story because Puerto Princesa and Palawan has so much history. The Tabon Man in Tabon Cave, the Spanish here in the city of Puerto Princesa in the province of Palawan. Napakalaki. But we have to tell the story for younger generations like me and the younger ones before me to know the culture and the heritage of the city of Puerto Princesa.
Mayor Ed.
Yeah, as I have mentioned earlier, this is completely a new horizon for me, yung legislation ng mga batas, of course. Pero ito, ang mapapangako ko lang sa ating mga indigenous tribes na we will do my best. I will do my best when I become the congressman to support their advocacies. Pero not at the expense of the destruction of our environment. May mga laws din na dapat sundin. Kagaya ng pagkagather ng almasiga, kung hindi scientific yan, mamamatay yung puno. So this must not be violated. Pero sa support, hindi yung magbabago ang support ko sa indigenous people.
Thank you, Mayor Ed. We now proceed to the next sector, education youth. Harvin Kayaon. Si Kong Ed naman, ha? Mayor Ed naman.
So yung question ko po is nagkaparehas po kami ng question ni Ma'am Sibilin sa question niya sa round 1, which is about teenage pregnancy. So in 2020, more than 4,000 Palaweña teens got pregnant before the age of 18. 700 po rito ang galing sa city. I'll just ask the question A, kasi po nasagot nyo na yung kanina. A significant portion of those teenage mothers ay nabuntis ng mga nakalalakihan with age of 21 years and older. How do you plan to address this apparent problem of child abuse and grooming?
Mayor Ed.
Actually po, sa term ko as mayor, hindi ko narinig na ganito kalaki yung problema sa ating teenage pregnancy. Pero now that we know, siguro I will have to really come up with a strong cooperation with the parents, teachers, and also the doctors, health officials, na tulungan tayo to help us come up with a solution through their recommendations. And as Congressman, I will do my best to support it.
Thank you. Kong Hill.
Thank you for that question, sir. I think one of the biggest problems here in Palawan as to teenage pregnancies, maagang pagbubuntis, is that it has to do with culture, especially of the IPs in the northern areas and southern areas. Because in their culture, kahit yung bata pupwede na agad. But there is a new law in relation to the solemnization of marriage na dapat 18 years old pataas lang. And ngayon ho, may bagong batas na kapag nagkasal ka, in fact, kahit ikaw ang nagkasal, you are criminally liable. So I think it would curb But second to that is that more on information dissemination talaga. Because in the areas of nandoon talaga sa medyo taas, especially in Brooks Point, when I was still in the Provincial Information Office, yung one day na lakaran nila, tayo abutin ng 3 days. And there, hindi nila alam kung ano yung mga programs ng gobyerno dahil konting information lang ang pumapasok. It's number one. It's the enforcement of the laws of the Philippines, especially on the far-flung areas, in order to curb the problem is teenage pregnancy. And as to the obligation of the male, kasi kawawa yung babae. Pag nabuntis, ang mag-aalaga, kung hindi yung pamilya ng babae, yung babae mismo. In terms of her education, tigil na. Yung lalaki, pahayahay lang. So we have to be given obligation to the male na ayusin at magkaroon siya ng obligasyon doon sa kanyang nabuntisan. If not, kailangan bang maglagay pa ng batas for it to be criminally liable? Yes, I am for that. Thank you po.
Thank you. Any follow-up question? Rick? No more? Next.
I would like to call Dr. Hidilyn Martinez for her question for women and children.
Si Kong Hil naman ang unang sasagot.
Okay, so ang tanong ko po ay tungkol sa children and conflict with law in Puerto Princesa. Dahil po tayo pinakamagandang syudad, tayo rin ang may pinakamaraming children and conflict with law sa buong rehiyon ng MIMAROPA, as well as with teenage pregnancy. Yan. So, ang tanong ko po ay meron na po tayong batas. Yung ating JJL, meron na tayong batas. At naibaba na rin po natin yung criminal liability or obligation ng bata. Kaya yun related sa tanong ko sana kanina kung pwede bang ibaba din natin. Anyway, pero papataas at papataas pa rin po. Sa ngayon ay meron tayong mahigit na 100 bata. 28 dito ay nasa center ng CSWD at ang kaiba ay nasa mga barangay na dumadaan sila sa Barangay Diversion Program. So ano po ang ating magagawa para mas mapaigting pa yung ating mga polisiya para dito dahil may policy na tayo. So ano pa po ang ating pwedeng maitulong dito? Kasi ganun pa rin po ang nangyayari at papataas din po ang kaso na kanilang kinaharap. Meron na rin rape, meron ng murder, may mga ganun ang kaso. Hindi na po ito petty crimes lang. So ano po ang ating mapapanukala para mas matugunan yung problema na ito?
Thank you for that question, ma'ams. Ganun ho talaga. Crime goes hand in hand with population and development. But as you have said, there is a policy of the state. But in order to have the policy to be implemented, especially here in the province of Palawan and the city of Puerto Princesa, dapat alam yung data, ma'am, which is, sabi niyo po, meron kayo. We'll have a sit down and get the data from you, especially to those children that are conflict with the law. And as to their, the policy of the state is to to rehabilitate, not to incarcerate them, and to have a program. Dahil kung talaga pang bata masyado, hindi pa molded yung kanyang psychology, na yun, it can still be changed. They can still be rehabilitated so that they could be kapaki-pakinabang ng mga miyembro ng society kapag sila ho ay lumaki. But the government must invest also in them. Kasi ho, yung sa atin dito, ang liit, yung ating bahay pag-asa. Ang nakita ko lang po yung nasa province, nandoon sa may PCSD. Pero maliit ho, hindi ka kasya ang 100 doon. 40 lang, baka kasya doon. Pero yung 100, hindi. So we must have, in order for us, if the policy of the state is to rehabilitate, we have to invest. But, yun nga po, we are in a pandemic. We are after Odette. So I think we have to push for the GAA for it to be included. Thank you po.
Thank you, Kong Hil. Manong Ed, children in conflict with laws.
Ito po, siguro pag-aaralan ko ng gusto pagka nasa office na ako. Pero initially, ang tingin ko, kailangan nating increase yung moral values, hindi lang ng mga bata, kundi pati yung mga magulang. And of course, gaya na sinasabi ko, yung stakeholders like the parents, teachers, yung ating mga local officials, na talagang magkaroon ng mga strong information dissemination drive para maparating sa mga magulang, mga anak, ang talagang dapat na kaugalian.
Any follow-up question, Doktora?
Okay. Gusto ko po i-follow up. Kung sakasakali po na ang bata ay nire-rehabilitate natin, so would you also recommend for the parents to be penalized ba in that sense? Kasi sila yung magulang na nag-aalaga sa mga bata, pero hindi na natin sasampulan yung mga magulang para din naman sila managot sa kanilang mga anak.
Mayor Ed, please.
Talaga na napapag-aralan yung mga existing laws about this. Pero palagay ko, dapat magkaroon din ng responsibility yung mga magulang.
Thank you, Kong Hil.
Thank you, ma'am. As things are right now, dapat to talaga yung obligasyon nandoon sa magulang. But we are not punishing them enough, yung magulang, in terms of the actions of the child. But I guess we have to revisit that law in relation to the obligations of the parents. For example po, may kaso, murder. Depende sa age eh. Kasi kung medyo matanda na yung bata going to 18, dapat mas lessen yung obligation. But kung bata pa talaga 10 pababa, the obligation should be on the parents because it is their responsibility for the actions of their child.
Thank you, Kong Hil. We're getting down to the last two sectors. But before we do that, I'd like to remind the audience to please tone down your voices. Medyo naririnig dito eh. So we need to focus on what's here. Okay? And also, kanina, kapag ka ang sumagot ng unang tanong, ang sasagot ng follow-up yung kabila naman para medyo mas maganda yung dynamics natin. We now call on the representative of the tourism sector. I'm sorry, medical. Kamali kita. Thank
Okay
you.
lang po. My question for this round is regarding PhilHealth. When patients become sick and become admitted, when their bill comes up, right there and then, mababawas po agad yung PhilHealth benefit ng patient. But the hospital and the doctors, they are paid very, very much late, no? At yung worst case scenario, sometimes they are not paid at all, no? During 2018, ang isang institution dito sa atin sa Puerto Princesa, ang utang ng PhilHealth is around 13 million, no? Wala pa doon yung ibang institutions. Yung doctors, the common scenario right now is minsan hindi talaga nababayaran. Pag maswerte, nababayaran kami earliest na ang 6 months after ng ma-discharge ang patient. So as a legislator, what can you do about this PhilHealth failing to pay our health institutions and our healthcare workers? Thank you, sir.
Mayor Ed muna.
Okay, nasa lubong ko na yung problema yan tungkol dito sa PhilHealth. As a matter of fact, tinulungan ko po yung co-op hospitals na makakolekta sa national kasi palakasan din pala doon. Kailangan medyo may kontak ka. And I can feel their sentiments dahil marami na ako nakausap na mga doctors na ito yung reklamo ng mga hospital nila. We have discussed this also with Attorney Belica sa ARTA, yung Anti-Red Tape Agency. And they're coming up with strong recommendations now about this problem. Yung, kasi itong red tape, at least kahit pa itong anti-red tape, can really address this question. Actually, sila ho yung pinuntahan ko para matulungan makakolekta ang ating hospital dito. And siguro, pag nandun na tayo sa Congress, mapag-aaralan din natin kung paano pa natin mapapalakas yung ating mga local hospitals na makasingil ng tama at the same time as an earlier period of time kaysa sa nadidelay.
Thank you, Kong Hil.
Doc, many a times we have called PhilHealth in the halls of Congress to explain themselves. I think the problem is not within the persons running PhilHealth, but it is the institution itself. Maraming pasikot-sikot, Doc, kung bakit nagdi-delay. For example, what's happening here? Because right now, feel ko, Doc, yung problema mo. Dahil we have opened co-op and Adventist doon sa ating mga programa sa MAIP, talaga hong delayed. In fact, ini-stop minsan ni co-op tsaka ni Adventist yung pagtulong sa mga tao dahil nga hindi pa nagbabayad si DOH tsaka si PhilHealth. Second, siguro ang pag-asa, pagkatapos ng eleksyon na ito, na magpalit ng executive na talagang balasahin yung PhilHealth, not only within the persons, but PhilHealth itself. Second is yung viability ng PhilHealth. Because right now, hindi sila viable as an institution, as a institution that is giving insurance. Hindi eh. They're asking always money from the national government. Every year, that is what is happening. Pag pinapatawag sila, yes, viable na sila. But I think they are not viable. So we have to revisit, especially right now, na nagkaroon ng universal healthcare law. Ang laki ng burden na naman ni PhilHealth. So I guess it's good sometimes na lahat nakaka-afford ng magandang pasilidad sa medicine, but at what cost? Tayong mga miyembro na nagbabayad, I think the ratio is 70-30. 70% ng membro ng PhilHealth ay hindi paying. Tayong 30% ang nagko-cover sa kanila. So we have to come up a solution, a national policy, in order for the conundrum of PhilHealth to be addressed. Otherwise, para lang tayong nagdi-delay ng inevitable. Because there will come a time na wala ng funds si PhilHealth, wala ng funds si gobyerno, patay ang lahing Pilipino.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Dr. Paul?
Sir, I'd like to follow up a question. If we were to give PhilHealth a certain period of time, let's say 3 to 6 months, to cover up what they should have paid already, and if they fail to do that, would you agree to penalize them?
Konghil.
Oh, definitely. No, dapat i-penalize, dapat may criminal liability. But sometimes the problem, Doc, is not with the papers. Sometimes the problem is with the budget. Talagang walang pagkukunan. Especially nowadays that the Philippines is budget deficit. Ibig sabihin yung kita natin hindi sakto doon sa panggastos ng gobyerno. Umuutang tayo. So there must be prioritization. But health, number one priority dapat po.
Thank you, Mayor Ed.
Yes, I agree with Congressman Acosta. Dapat talaga ma-penalize.
All right, so we're down to the last two.
Yes, so now we'd like to invite Mr. Brian John Dizon to ask his second question on tourism.
Thank you, Ma'am Beth.
Konghil to answer first.
So, usapang recovery pa din po tayo. No? So, will you support, no, if you get elected, will you support any form of tax break, relief, or any form of assistance for the businesses heavily impacted by the pandemic?
Yes, definitely. Especially the MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. Dapat magkaroon ng tax break, not only in the city of Puerto Princesa, but all throughout the province of Palawan, especially to those tourism industries na medyo aligned. Because for the past 2 years, talagang grabe ang nangyari sa turismo. Second is that we have to have better appreciations for the businesses. Especially right now, ang taas ng taxes natin sa city. So not only on the local level, but also in the national level, we have to give incentive. We have to make, because the bread and butter of Palawan is and will always be tourism. But as I have said, the future of Palawan is not only with tourism, dapat agrikultura rin. Sayang yung lupa. Nasabi ng lolo ko, there is no barren land, there is only barren mind. Sayang ang lupa ng Puerto Princesa kung hindi ho gamitin at linangin in terms of turismo. But yes, sir, definitely, we will support. Especially, we are filing a bill as to those, especially in Puerto, Odette, and that of the pandemic, to have a certain budget allocation entirely supportive of those businesses, those industries that were heavily hit by the pandemic. So yan ho, titignan natin, but it would always depend on the next president, on the next executive. So doon na ho tayo magkita kung sakali sa susunod na kabanata ng politika dito sa lungsod ng Puerto Princesa.
Thank you.
Yung nga po ang nabanggit ko kanina, as early as now, nagre-reconnect na ako sa mga national agencies na tumulong sa atin sa mga problema natin sa turismo. And isa itong, sabi ko, reason why we're calling for another, when I sit as congressman, for another investment forum, to invite all these investors and discuss the problems that we have to solve before we can really promote tourism ng kagaya ng dati. Pero definitely ho, ang una natin gagawin is to really help the, of course, yung mga na-displace na mga businesses sa kanilang, at yung mga mamamayan na nawala ng trabaho. And restore the beauty of our areas for tourism. Dahil napakarami yung ngayon. Nalulungkot nga kapag pumunta ako sa mga areas na tourism destinations natin, napakaraming puno pa na nakatumba. Magiging eyesore ito sa ating mga turista if we really invite them now and see still the effects of the Typhoon Odette. Kaya napakahalaga po na magkaroon ulit tayo ng ugnayan. Yun ang nawala sa atin, yung connection sa national agencies where before all these agencies come to Puerto Princesa to help us. Even the presidents, if you'll remember, almost all the presidents that I served came to Puerto Princesa to help us in the development of our tourism agencies. And yun po ulit ang ating gagawin.
Thank you. Any follow-up, please?
Obviously, we appreciate po that you will support the relief. But I would like to ask, if we can be specific. Kasi po, we know na as mentioned by Kong Hill, tumaas pa yung taxes despite the pandemic. Mas mataas pa yung mga binayaran ng businesses. It's all about survivability ng mga businesses na nandito. Ganda po yung idea ni Sir Ed na mag-i-invite ng forum para sa new investors. Ang question po ay sana yung mga nandito na po, na tinamaan lamang para magpatuloy ang negosyo at lalo pang lumaki. Isang specific po.
Kung matatandaan nyo, nagkaroon tayo ng Asian crisis noon, I think early 90s. Buong Pilipinas naapektuhan. Pero dito hindi natin naramdaman. Kasi nagbigay ng full support ang ating administration sa mga na-displaced. Especially doon sa nawalan ng trabaho, nagkaroon tayo ng emergency employment program para masustain sila during the crisis. At yung mga negosyong naapektuhan, naglabas din tayo ng pondo para masuportahan sila during that expected crisis. Hindi naman natin naramdaman ng crisis dito sa Puerto Princesa because of that. And that's what we will do when we...
Thank you, Mayor Ed.
Congressman.
Kong Hill.
Definitely 100% agree. We first and foremost priority the local because prior to the pandemic, I think the carrying capacity of the local industry is kaya naman ho in terms of tourism. Yes, also we have to invite other investors for the development of other sites here in the Puerto Princesa. But specific is for the MSMEs to be helped by the government in relation to their tax breaks and also incentives para ho makapagsimula mulit. Dahil 2 years a very long time na puro labas, walang pasok.
Thank you. And we're down to the last, Mr. RG Lim.
Yes, thank you. My question would be about electricity. Talagang tinatamaan tayong lahat dito, especially ang mga businesses. No? Matagal na po nating nagiging problema ang pagba-brown out at ang mataas na rate ng elektrisidad dito po sa Puerto Princesa at sa buong lalawigan ng Palawan. Ito po ay isang consideration ng mga investors para pumunta rito sa atin, yung electricity supply. Ano po ang maitutulong niyo sa problema natin dito sa elektrisidad?
Edward? Mayor Ed?
Well, ang isang pinoproblema natin, yung attempts to privatize Paleco. Medyo ino-oppose namin yun dahil ito na lang yung kauli-ulihang kooperatiba sa kuryente na pag-aari ng taong bayan, pag-aari ng mga taga Puerto Princesa. Ang tingin ko, ang dapat gawin ng gobyerno, kung sa tingin nila kinukulang ang supply ng kuryente, suportahan yung Paleco para madagdagan yung kanilang pondo, masuportahan yung kanilang needs para mapaganda yung ating